Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Other Side. I'm your host, Bob Serber, along with my host, Paul Fournier, this evening. And tonight is our special guest. We have Cheryl and Joe Blancato from Second Chance Animal Shelter. Good evening, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start the conversation. How'd you guys get started doing this? This isn't the kind of profession somebody goes to school and they say, I think I'm going to be an animal control officer and open up a no-kill shelter. How'd you guys do this?
Well, I started out being an assistant animal control officer, and then when he retired, I became the full animal control officer. And how the shelter started was, as an animal control officer, I found I get a lot of animals, and there was no place for them to go. I would have to drive over an hour to a no-kill shelter, and a lot of times there was a wait list. So I would hold on to animals for a long time, and there was just no resources out here for them. So I thought I would start a shelter.
How hard was it, actually starting the shelter? Did you have any idea what it was going to be like? Did you go to talk to somebody? Did you have anybody kind of mentoring you through this process? How did this go? How'd you go about it?
You know, it's a real eye-opener when you start a nonprofit, no matter what it is. People think it's easy to just start a rescue. Oh, this is easy, and I'm going to save some animals. And there's so much more involved in it. Number one, there's a lot of paperwork with the government. Number two, there's a lot of hard work raising the money. It's not easy. It's very expensive to run a rescue. Animals come in, need thousands of dollars of care. So you're constantly going between, the general work of taking care of the animal and raising the money, and you're back and forth. Because you can't, if you don't have the money, you can't help the animals, and you're trying to help the animals, but you gotta spend the time to raise the money, and it's back and forth.
We frequently get folks that come to us and say, gee, we love what you guys do. We'd like to start a shelter. Can you give us some advice? Our advice is work with an established shelter to get a feeling for what goes on, because it really is not, as Cheryl says, as easy as it looks. It's a complicated thing. Particularly, this shelter's been around for 15 years now. Cheryl actually started this in 1999. As the shelter grows, as you bring more animals in, as the programs begin to expand, staff obviously has to increase, the number of volunteers has to increase. So, and we hate to say this when we talk about the world of animal rescue, but really what happens is you have to have a business side to running a shelter that becomes as big as Second Chance is now, as well as the passion and the drive to do the rescue work. So it's not easy.
So you just mentioned rescue work. So is the majority of your animals, is it somebody calls you and says, hey, listen, I can't take this animal anymore? Or is it strays, or is it a combination of both? What's the percentage as far as?
It's a combination of all of them. It depends on the time of year and what's going on. A lot of our animals are owner surrenders. We also take animals from animal control officers, from other rescue groups, emergency situations, disasters. With this economy, shelters have been closing, so we've been taking shelter animals from other shelters.
Wow.
Abandonments. They come from everywhere. And we never know from one day to the next where they're going to come from.
Well, okay, so when you say from everywhere, do you take animals in from other parts of the country as well?
Most of our animals come from Massachusetts. Last year, 91% did. 9% came from out of state. I can tell you quite a few of them. One came from one particular hoarding case that we helped the Humane Society of the United States with. We ended up bringing back 50 animals just from that case.
Wow.
The year before, Hurricane Sandy, we brought animals back from that. Whatever disasters and stuff come up, we've had almost at least one or two hoarding cases every year from Massachusetts.
Here in the state, right?
Yeah. We did 80 cats from one house, 30 from another.
80 cats?
Yep. People don't realize how much of that goes on in Massachusetts.
That's like out of control.
And when you get that volume of animals at one time, number one, it's very expensive. And number two, it takes a long time. It really drains your resources. Even when multiple organizations get involved to do these cases, it still is a lot of work.
When you're dealing with hoarders, these people, because I've seen the show a couple times on TV and I'm always stunned.
Yeah.
But did they hoard animals the same as they do, like with some of the clothing and furniture and everything else that they have in their lives?
Most times, in fact, I'd say pretty much every time, maybe a couple of exceptions, they start out, their hearts are in the right place.
Yep.
They want to save animals. They may see stray cats walking around their neighborhood. Some friends might say, gee, my cat just had a litter of kittens and I can't take care of them. Will you take them? And then what happens is they begin to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's a sickness just like anything else, as you said, we see on TV. They just get in over their heads. It becomes very expensive. The house gets overtaken. They're overwhelmed. They just don't know what to do.
Yep.
Fortunately, if they somehow come across our path, we're able to go out there and help them. But, and Cheryl can tell you, when you go in and you want to start taking some of these animals out for various reasons. One, some of them are not healthy. We need to do spay-neuter so the thing doesn't just keep expanding. It's very difficult for them to say, okay, go ahead, because they know every single, even though there are 80 cats in the house, they know every single one by name, and they could tell you exactly what the description of that cat is and this cat is. So it's very difficult
And then
for them.
they're not bad people. I mean, they
No, not
meant
at all.
well and everything. They truly love, a lot of them
Right.
truly love these animals, and it's hard for them to let go. I'm very proud of them when they can and do what's best, and it's really nice when they call themselves and say, hey, I've gotten in over my head.
I'm being overwhelmed.
It's wonderful because then it's nice to work with them. It's hard when you get called in to assist an animal control officer or something when they call up and say, hey, I just went into a house and there's 80 cats, I need your help. And then we have to kind of mobilize the troops here and get enough resources together to pull in to get these animals. I mean, it's expensive. That one case of 80 animals was $12,000–$14,000. Just in basic spay-neuter, medical
care,
it
And
gets
I would guess with 80 cats, they all can't be in the best of health.
No, they're not.
a lot of inbreeding, things like
That's what
that.
happens, yeah.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. So now, do you have a relationship with a local veterinarian to take care of, or do you have a veterinarian that comes in and
We actually have a wellness center. Our adoption center is in East Brookfield,
Right.
and our wellness center is in North Brookfield, and we have 5 veterinarians on staff.
On staff, yeah.
And we have a full veterinary clinic that's open to the public, has subsidized veterinary care for those that
wait a
can't
minute,
afford
this is all part of this
Second
is
chance, yep.
this is and this is a
I was doing the research on this. I was amazed. I had no idea you guys were that.
I
bad.
have no because now I'm not confused, but I'm actually a little overwhelmed with what you have taken on, to tell you the truth.
Let me take
So we started with you being an assistant
animal control.
animal control officer to a second chance shelter
Correct.
No, to town, yep,
to a full veterinary
Yes.
clinic.
that's correct.
Yep, over in North Brookfield.
Very quietly doing this work, too.
Yeah,
I might
holy
add.
smokes! I had no
Well,
idea.
the focus is always on the animals. What happens is in rescue, I'll take you back a little bit. Back 10 or 15 years ago when we started this, the common knowledge for rescue was we need to have a building so that we can take animals off the street, whether they're stray, abandoned, or surrendered. And we need a place to house them so that we can eventually find new homes for them. Well, like everything in the world, paradigms change. The world of rescue over the last 10 or 15 years has changed dramatically. It is no longer just a case of let's have a little shelter with some kennels and some food and we can take care of animals. What it's turned into is we need to figure out how to keep animals from going into the shelter. That's the real root solution to the problem of overpopulation. Rather than, most people say, well, how many animals did you adopt this year? Well, that's really not the level of success is how many animals do we keep coming out. So as we looked at it, senior staff and board of directors, overpopulation was one issue, so we started a spay-neuter clinic in North Brookfield. We do, between 5,000 and 6,000 spay-neuters a year at that clinic. 5 vets on staff, 4 certified vet techs.
It's crazy.
With a ratio of 5 to 1, if we do 6,000, we're talking 30,000 animals that don't get put into the system. So now we're beginning to solve that problem of bringing animals
It's prevention
into
as
shelter.
much as it is
Exactly.
anything else, and education.
Stage number 2 as this began to develop is people surrender animals because they have medical issues. Particularly when the economy crashed in 2008, people said, I can't afford $400 or $500 to go to the vet to get my animal fixed. So I love my animal. I don't want to see it suffer. So I'm going to bring it to the shelter and let the shelter deal with it because that's the right thing for me to do morally. So we decided that we needed to have a full-service veterinary clinic. We have everything from digital x-ray to blood analyzing machine. Like we said, five vets on staff. The place is packed every day out in North Brookfield. Again, now we're able to resolve the issues of medical problems at a low cost because we are a 501c3, so we do have wonderful donors. We're able to get grants. So we're able to do the work for folks who are on low income at very low prices, or in some cases even no price. So now we've solved another issue of animal. So for us at Second Chance, it's not building the bigger shelter. It's keeping the animals out of the shelter that is really the solution to the overpopulation, the abuse, and the suffering of animals. I hope that makes sense.
I'm overwhelmed as far as that part is concerned. So let's get to the clinic for a second. It's a full clinic, obviously. So for dogs, we're talking heartworm.
Yep.
And all of the stuff that is associated with dogs.
Yep.
And cats, I know, have a higher chance of leukemia and stuff like that. So you guys take care of all of that as well.
Yep.
Is it strictly dogs and cats, or are we talking,
We
birds,
actually,
horses?
We actually have a vet now that does all the exotics. He's in once a week, and he takes care of any exotic animals, the little pocket
Birds,
pets.
reptiles,
All that.
ferrets.
He also does the holistic side. So if people want to get away from traditional or in conjunction with traditional, they can take holistic acupuncture and things like that, which help with pain issues with animals. In addition to the clinic, with the clinic, we also have a weekly walk-in vaccine clinic every Wednesday from 9 to 11, so that we can ensure that people will get their animals vaccinated for rabies and distemper and prevent the diseases that were very prevalent only a few years ago.
Again, at low cost. So again, the focus being on the animals, those who are in the lower income levels can come to the clinic on a Wednesday, and for $12 they can get the animal vaccinated so that we prevent the kind of diseases that we used to see out in the street being prevalent.
Which might be the population probably more, and especially I imagine with the elderly too, that aren't going to have those finances to do
Absolutely.
that. And did you guys ever envision this becoming? I mean, because this isn't something you sit around and say, well, I think I'm going to have a whole staff of vets, and we're going to. I mean, you guys are doing some amazing work. I gotta say.
Can you imagine sitting down and
Imagine what that conversation must look like.
supper time one night. Hey, let's give this a thought.
Well, that's sometimes what happens.
Impressed.
But what happens is when there's an animal out there that comes to us that we can't help, that's when we say, okay, what can we do? We need to do something here so that isn't the issue. We have the educational outreach in the school. We see thousands of kids throughout Worcester County in the schools trying to bring up the next generation to appreciate animals so that we don't have the abuse cases that we see now and things like that. We have a pet food pantry. We service 9 local food pantries with food, which helps to prevent people from having to surrender just simply because they can't afford food. And that's a big thing, especially with the elderly. When we started doing this, there was an elderly woman that came up to one of our volunteers and said, "Thank you so much for doing this because now I don't have to choose between my own medication and feeding my pet."
And that's how we get these ideas. Folks come in and they'll say, I have to surrender my animal because I can't afford to buy food for it. And we sit back once we take care of that animal and say, we can't allow, our mission does not allow us morally or in any respect to have that happen to an animal. So what can we do to resolve those problems? We have people coming to the shelter, as I said before, my animal's very sick, I can't see it suffering, I need to surrender it. What can we do to alleviate that so that doesn't happen? It's just, again, the paradigm shift in rescue, and fortunately we've been able to recognize it as we move down that path. It's just been changing dramatically over the last decade. So just building a shelter, I'll give you an example. There are 5,000 shelters in the United States. 5 million animals are surrendered to those 5,000 shelters every year. Of the 5 million, approximately 3.5 million are put to death, euthanized, simply because of lack of space. So when we looked at that, Strategically, we said, could we build a shelter big enough to hold 3.5 million animals? Answer is clearly no. And then we took it one step further and said, well, even if we could do that, could we possibly place in homes another 3.5 million animals? Answer is no. So where's the solution to the problem? Let's keep the 3.5 million animals in their homes. How do we do that? And then we go through.
You work backwards, really, is what it was. Now, you mentioned kids in schools and stuff. Do you have any type of, like Home Depot on Saturday mornings, you can bring your it's not that funny.
You can do like the birdhouses and stuff.
Yeah,
I can just see your kids with the birdhouse. They'd be whacking each other with a hammer.
No, but what I'm saying is on Saturday mornings from like 9 to 11, you can go to Home Depot and, spend some time learning some stuff.
Yes.
Do you have any type of program for that, for kids?
We have actually several. We have a junior volunteer program. If they're under 18, they are required to have a parent with them. And they can come in and volunteer at the shelter. As part of our educational program, the woman who goes into our schools and stuff, she also provides tours at the shelter. A lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts come in, and she shows them the shelter, gives them a little tour, explains what we're doing and things like that. And it's been wonderful for the kids. And a lot of the kids after that will get their parents to go in and volunteer with them. And it's wonderful. We have 325 volunteers, which is amazing. Last year we had 20,000 hours of volunteers helping our shelter, which is great.
That's a pretty high number.
Well, we need it because we have a very small staff, and we try to keep our staff as small as possible because we want all the funding to go to the animals. And so those that do work for the shelter work very hard, and we rely very heavily on the volunteers.
The educational outreach program, we actually have a retired teacher who goes into the local elementary schools, high schools, along with a therapy dog, which actually is one of our shelter dogs that became a therapy dog, and educates the kids. Come on over, meet Harley. Here's how you greet a dog. Pet Harley. So what we're trying to foster is this next generation that is going to become adult to have a profound respect for animals, and hopefully the abuse kind of things that we see going on in today's world, a generation from now we can begin to eradicate.
Is there a minimum age requirement as far as the kids are concerned?
We don't really have a set minimum, but we really don't recommend children under like 7 or 8, just because they're not really usually able to handle the shelter environment and stuff, and it gets a little crazy.
Yeah.
So that's what we recommend. But we're very proud of what we do because, in fact, we're starting to get some national recognition. We're going to be featured next month in a national magazine, a spotlight on how we are doing things totally different than was seen in the past, and it's getting successful. We help 10,000 animals a year now, which is great.
That was actually my follow-up question, was exactly how many animals do you have in the shelter, specifically. I don't think you can, let's say monthly.
Yep.
Or I don't know if you can break it down weekly or on average.
Daily average, we probably have, 70 animals, 80, during the heavier times of the year with foster homes for, the kittens and things like that, we might have as many as 100, 110.
Jeez.
We place approximately 800 animals a year out of the shelter. But again, and Cheryl and I get adamant about this, the real level of our success is not whether it's 700, 800, or 900 animals placed. It's that 10,000 animals that we've been able to keep from going into the shelter, because that's the real cure to the problem.
You guys seem to be doing. I mean, this is not just a shelter. This isn't just a drop off for somebody that's having an issue, whether it's economically or whatever.
That's right, Bob.
I mean, you guys are doing outreach programs. Yep. I mean, you're doing education programs, and that's one thing you see on Facebook. And Paul and I both have dogs, and it's like they're part of the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you see these things on Facebook, you see these sites on Facebook more and more showing up about, people, asking you to stop animal torture, and people becoming more and more aware.
Absolutely.
So what you guys are doing is just feeding into that.
Yes.
Making people, because for a long time, I think people, and especially I see it a lot in Boston where I work, is people tend to get animals. They buy pets, and then they realize this isn't really suited for me because they don't do the research. So by you guys doing this, and doing that outreach, it's like people need to make informed choices when they're choosing a pet. Yep. Is dog appropriate?
One of the other things that we pride ourselves on is anybody that comes to the shelter looking to adopt an animal goes through our application process. So we just want basic information, you know. Your
I saw
name, your
that
number,
online.
so we can get in contact with. But what we also want to do is we want to make sure that we are placing, because we're kind of experts at this, I guess, after 15 years, we want to make sure that we're placing the right animal with the right home. I wouldn't want to put a 2-year-old Labrador Retriever with, you know, a retired couple. It's just a mismatch. So we're very careful about making sure that the right animal is going in the right home. We want it to be successful.
Actually, what I want to talk about is I'm kind of blown away by all this, because even though
I was like, this is not what I expected.
Because I've heard about you guys for so long, and like I said, when the retriever pups came up, when the dogs got abandoned, and I posted that on Facebook, and I said, wow, I'm doing something great, you know. And it's like I look at what you guys are doing, and I hear what you guys are doing, and it's like, that's amazing. You guys have been there for so long, and maybe you guys could tell exactly where both clinics are, so people could be more aware.
The adoption center is located on 111 Young Road in East Brookfield, which is just off of House Street, and our wellness center is located at 372 North Main Street in North Brookfield, which is, many people around here might remember the John Lane car dealership.
Oh, okay,
yeah. We bought that building from him a couple of years ago. And we actually we renovated it, and we've actually recently just opened a second surgical area in there. So it's all, you know, state of the art.
Listen.
And what we're doing now is we have more room for our veterinary clinic, because when you used to come in the lobby, we even had to have the dog kennels for surgery in a part of the lobby area, because we were renovating the back. But now that's all changed, and it's really nice. We have a huge 20 by 40 education room that's been used already by a couple of groups to provide educational programs and things like that, which is great. We have a dog park there too for people.
Open to the public.
Back to the kids real quick. Is there a certain day that they can show up, or is it call you guys first and say, hey, my son wants to come up and spend a little time?
There's a process for volunteering. You can go right online. There's a volunteer application. You fill it out. We bring you in for an orientation, so that it's like 10-15 minutes, so that you understand, you know, what the shelter is, and so that you understand what we're doing. And then we get you involved. The volunteer hours are usually 8 to 10, 7 days a week, and 6 to 8 at night, except Saturdays it's 5 to 7. We also have volunteers in there during the day as well. As long as there's staff there, there's a lot of volunteers that come in. We have a lot of retirees that come in every day and volunteer, which is, we love that. You know, it's a lot of fun. They all, you know, we have a group of women that take care of the cats. We have other ones that come in for the dogs, and they're there every day, and they love it. And we love having them, because they're regular. You know, they can tell you everything you want to know about any animal at the shelter.
Well, what I'm going to do, we got about a minute and a half left, so I just wanted to go over some of the awards and honors these guys have gotten. They're voted Top Mass Shelter and Animal Rescue Site Challenge in June 2011, opened a Wellness and Education Center in 2010, HSUS Emergency Placement Partners of 2010 to name one of top 10 partners in the country in 2011 and 2012.
And 2013.
And 2013.
Yeah.
We just got that.
Humane Alliance member as of 2010. Shelter of the Week by the SPCA International for the Food of Pets Pantry program. Say that quick, Paul. Top Mass Shelter in 2009. Named Outstanding Shelter by the SPCA. Featured on the Mike and Juliet Morning Show, which is why we'll have to go to their agent next time we try to have them in.
There's nothing as big
I mean,
as this.
just the list goes on. There's more stuff to read. I'm absolutely blown away by the work you guys are doing, and I'm really glad we decided to have you folks in. I'd like this not to be the last time.
Absolutely.
Please let us know anything. If it raffles, you said there's a golf drive coming. If you want to talk, if you want to just mention that.
There's
real
a
quick.
golf tournament coming up in July 19th. Yep. It's our second annual. It's very popular. The first one sold out, so we're hoping for the same this year. And then in the fall, we have September 13th and 14th. We have an animal weekend. September 13th is the Paws and Pedals, which is a motorcycle ride. And this year we added bicycles. We're having a bicycle ride, either a 10-mile family or a 25-mile trek. And then the next day is the Run Walk Wag, which is a 5 and 10K road race, and a 2-mile walk.
And we do that all at our wellness center in North Brookfield.
All I can say is thank you for doing the work you guys are doing. Josh, how much time do we have before we can roll? We have a video we want to show? Okay, we're going to be showing a video in 15 seconds. Again, I just want to say thank you very much for coming in. I mean,
Thanks for
this
having us.
has been very eye-opening.
We appreciate the
All right,
chance.
hey, thank you very much, guys. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in,
Thank
Joe
you.
and
Thank
Cheryl.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I ever need someone when I'm feeling down, if I'm ever feeling lonely, I know you'll be around. If I ever find myself in trouble and I really don't know what to do, I'm not scared 'cause I know that I can count on you. Loving you is easy, believing is so easy, and just like counting 1, 2, 3, you can count on me. If I ever wake up crying in the middle of the night, I can hear you whisper to me, everything will be alright. If I ever think the world's out to get me and I don't think I can make it through, I won't quit 'cause I know that I can count on you. Loving you is easy, believing is so easy, and just like counting 1, 2, 3, you can count on me.
And we're back with our other guest tonight, Mr. Peter Rock, who's running for the East Brookfield School Committee seat. Peter, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you, Bob, Paul. Nice to see you, gentlemen. I can't think how long it's been since we've sat at the same table together, but it's been a while.
Since 2010.
I know.
Peter and I served on the school committee together. Peter served on numerous elected and appointed local government committees. He served on the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, Cable Access Committee, Memorial Day Committee, Chair of East Brookfield Bicentennial Committee, several building committees, East Brookfield Town, Paxton Elementary, Shrewsbury High School, and on 2 school committees. Peter, the obvious question, and you and I have talked about this before, why do you want to do this again?
Well, what made me decide to run again for the school committee is the result of the management experiences we've seen lately and the kinds of issues that the school department has faced. Frankly, the idea that the school department could go into a $1.7 million deficit, and no one seemed to see any of that until the thing was accomplished and finished. That the system was designed to have watchdogs in the whole thing. You start with your business manager, you go to your treasurer, you've got your superintendent, and you've got the school committee. And to just say, the ground rules were probably not laid down for people like the treasurer as to what they should be talking about to the school committee. I think my experience has been, and I was a treasurer at one point for Quabog, I only answered, and that's what the state law says you'll do, you only answer to the school committee. You don't work for the superintendent, you don't work for any of the lower echelon. When you're treasurer, that's who you answer to. The school committee at Quabog wanted me at every school committee meeting with a written report of expenditures, and they wanted to look at any deficit line accounts, and they wanted an explanation from the business manager and the superintendent what was going on. And that could stop things very quickly. But the treasurer is a key person when you look at that system. The other thing, of course, is As school committee members, I'm sure you gentlemen remember, you've got the warrant that comes out, and you're expected to read that, then you approve it at the next meeting. Well, obviously, that becomes something that most people who get onto a school committee have never seen before and who do not really fully understand what that's all about. But if you were doing the job correctly, and I know given the fact that we all make zero money on this job, you do have to say to yourself, I have to take a look at this. There are things I want to look at. How are the deficits going? How's the money going? And so forth. That's also important. I just feel I have the background and the experience that I can bring that kind of view and experience with me and help people and just make sure we don't get ourselves involved in those kind of financial crises.
I think we're already there. I mean, we've been pretty, I'd have to say, open about how we feel about the school committee. What do you see that's going on that you would do different if you given the chance, Peter?
Well, again, I certainly would want to clearly define the treasurer's role vis-a-vis the school committee. That's who that person answers to. Also, what else entails with that is that person would not be working for the school department in any other role. You're only given one. It is a part-time position, especially for a school system like Spencer. That's a small district with, frankly, which is a small budget. And so as a result, perhaps 1 day a week should be enough for a treasurer to do their work. And that would certainly, it wouldn't make the cost too expensive, but then it would do just to make it very clear where we're going. That's one of the things. The other thing, recently we all heard the superintendent say he's going to be asking for an override for $600,000 for computers. I've been involved with computer purchasing. I started with Shrewsbury. I got into computers back in 1968 when the computers were still Sperry Univacs that were vacuum tubes, and I had a couple of cavemen who cooked my supper for me, But nevertheless, I think I want an explanation, and I think the voters have a right to understand, what are you going to buy with this? Can you tell us how many computers, how much is software, how much are operating systems? I heard the statement made, well, we've got 5- and 6-year-old computers. 5- and 6-year-old computers can work. Now, I understand that they were talking about Microsoft saying that they're no longer going to support the XP operating system.
They're not going to do the platform anymore.
Fine. We'll change the operating system. And what will that cost? Especially if you're talking about computers for an entire school, you get a licensing agreement that goes with all of these, and it's far cheaper than if you were to walk into a store and buy one single unit. So I think if that's what we need, let's see how we're going to accomplish that. If there are computers that need to be replaced, then let's replace them. But if there are computers that we can upgrade, give them the new operating systems or whatever they need, let's talk about that too. So I just would like to see where they categorize all of their expenses, and what does it mean for the town? What are we going to get out of it?
Well, I don't think all the computers are necessarily out of date. There's a percentage of them that are 10, 12, and 13 years old that will not support any operating system because they're just, without having to rebuild all of them. That much I know. Some of the other ones that are maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, I think they've actually taken those ones, and I think they're going to be able to work with those ones. As far as technology is concerned, we're way behind in technology. We're millions of dollars behind in technology. Okay, am I for an override for that? Absolutely not. I'd rather do a debt exclusion so that the taxpayers know that after a couple of years that's going to be paid off, or after 5 years or 10 years. And I wouldn't even go for $600,000. I'd go for the $1 million and say, $1 million debt exclusion. Let's get the schools back where they belong. So that our kids can actually compete with other kids in other districts where instead of using, well, I know you mentioned something about cavemen, but Fred Flintstone, chisels and stones.
Well, Paul, I think the answer to that, no, I don't agree with just coming out with $1 million.
Well, that was a
But
That was an arbitrary number. That was
I want to see some concrete numbers. I want to see a concrete program. I want to know exactly what you're looking at. That's what I'm talking about. And why can't we let the voters know what's going on? You want to have them vote for an override, don't you? Or an debt exclusion, whatever it is that requires a vote. All I'm saying is, let's tell people what we're doing. Now, the other misleading fact here is we're lagging in technology. I can tell you that in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, in 1982, I was introducing the Apple computer. Shrewsbury was the first district to have them. And people said, "Are you crazy? That's a toy. Only that IBM machine makes sense." Well, we stuck with Apple. We got all kinds of money from Apple. And by the late 1980s, every kid in Shrewsbury had a computer at his desk. Now, does that mean you do need it? No. I have to tell you that I can recall on the committee, you may recall the chairman at the time of the finance committee from East Brookfield, who it was in an architectural office, and he was talking about, yeah, we got to get bigger and better computers to teach these kids how to do drafting. No, we're not a trade school, and I think people have to remember that. We're not going to teach people how to become draftsmen. If they want to do that, they can go to, when they go to Worcester Tech, they can figure that out. There are places for it, but not there. What I'm concerned about is I want to see what the curriculum is that they want to support. And I remember this, and you may remember this when you were kids in school. You had a teacher who you'd come in the morning and Mr. Jones would hit the old projector and you'd sit there for 45 minutes watching some film, and if he forgot, you probably saw it next week too. That's not what, and I can remember the former superintendent when you gentlemen were with me, talking about we need more streaming to bring in more information into the classrooms. Well, I wanted to know, what's the role of the teacher? Is he going to be, he or she, are they going to be presenting things? Are they going to be using textbooks? Is it going to be more, or are we simply going to put a screen up and just say, here it is? Then if we can get rid of all the teachers, we could save a lot of money and just have somebody who can turn the switches on. And that's not what we want. You want to have interaction. You want to have people who can tell you right away, if you've got a question, they can answer it. And you want people, you're supposed to use, I can remember when we were working with some early geometry programs for kids. You didn't just throw it at them, but you were saying, just to make them better understand what, for example, a circumference was, or a triangle, or what do you mean by an obtuse triangle, and what does it look like, and what's the difference? How do angles impact when you change one side? Now, if you can show it to them, that's good. But you've got to talk to them too. You've got to really talk about the math and everything else. So I think that's very important. And I'll tell you, if you've seen the recent issue that came out of Time magazine talking about going to a 6-year high school. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. And if you're a parent with kids, it's nice to know that instead of paying $40,000 for 4 years, wouldn't you rather pay $40,000 for 2 years and let the high school cover it on that? This article was saying, in effect, your kids would stay for 2 additional years. It would be like a junior college level program, but the credits could be accepted and counted by a college. So you could cut that back and you'd use that. Now, it sounds like a good idea, but I sat down, I'm thinking, what about the problems? See, I can teach you calculus and advanced calculus in those 2 years. But before all of that begins, I got to go back to when you were 6 years old. And I've got to make you like math. And I want you to know how to English language and sciences. We really have to look at the whole curriculum for something like that as well. You've got to go all the way back to the start, and you've got to work a program that excites kids, makes them want to learn, and that they like these subjects. And if you don't like it, you're just losing time and you're wasting money. So that's part of it.
One of the things we're looking at, I know, as a school system, and Josh, you can chime in here too, because you know as much about this as anybody, is the Common Core that they're talking about introducing. And Paul and I have our own views on Common Core. Part of the problem with Common Core is it requires an upgrading of all the computer systems, and that's a huge issue. and we're nowhere near anything like that right now. And I agree and you know, when you and I were on the committee, we talked about upgrading technology. When Paul and Josh on the committee, they talked about upgrading technology. Now we're in a situation where they've thrown this in our lap. Josh, you said something about a debt exclusion. Were they talking about doing the computers as part of a debt exclusion?
As far as I know, they were talking about a debt exclusion for the computers, and the 630 something thousand was about halfway, so it would be 1.2 to get all of the technology, or at least that was the impression I got. And as far as what we're upgrading, we got a very basic list. It was this many computers are completely out of date. We can't use them. Throw them away. And there was another percentage of the computers that were upgradable. I'm assuming those are the newer computers. We can put whatever the Windows 8,
right?
Get rid of the Windows XP, go with Windows 8. The other computers couldn't even handle it, so they have to be taken away, and new computers need to replace them. As far as other reasons we need to upgrade, if Massachusetts does go with the new test, if they get rid of MCAS, and they go with it's PARC, I believe. I don't know a ton about it, but from how it was explained to me, the computer systems would have to be upgraded to these new computers or this new operating system to handle it. Plus, the bandwidth would have to be upped because the test is done on the computers.
Which means a bigger server.
Which means a much bigger server. I believe one of the computer technology people did a little presentation a couple meetings ago about it, and they said that the servers have to be upgraded, but the computers also have to be upgraded to handle what we need them to do. So it sounds like upgrading computers has never been much of a priority, or software, anything like that has never been much of a priority, and we're going to need to face that. Unfortunately, we put it off so long that we need to deal with it, and we're kind of coming down to the wire here. If PARC happens, XP's already happening. If PARC happens, we're in bad shape. We're going to have to do something.
I wish it was more, a lot more clear, because when I was at the meeting the other night and I'm watching this, it was like, it wasn't totally clear to me whether this was an override or a debt exclusion. I understood the 630,000 was for computers, but that's the, and I saw that today in the paper too, in the New Leader. New Leader pretty much said the same thing.
You do a debt exclusion, taxpayers are going to know exactly where the money's
exactly.
going to go. You can't do anything with it. There's a beginning and an end. So, that being said, let's go back in time a little bit, Peter. You mentioned Dr. Naiman, and I know you were part of that committee that was formed to go out and find the new superintendent. So lead us down the path of how that happened and why you ended up with him as a, I don't know if it's okay to say his name, I guess it is, but how did we end up with him? Because I wasn't involved in that. Okay, there's a lot of people probably watching that weren't involved in that, but he left us in a mess. And how, what were the steps, and how did his past get by that committee?
Well, to begin with, Spencer really had never had a professional search, ever, for a superintendent. I was familiar with it. As a matter of fact, there were 4 agencies in Massachusetts that I had used. The Massachusetts what were they? The MMC,
the MASC,
the
is
MASC,
who we used.
The School Committee Association I had never used. I did call the 4 agencies that I knew of, and none of them wanted to come to Spencer. That's simple. So the association, the School Committee Association did want to come in. So the committee agreed. I brought it forward. It was the only one we had. So we did get them to come in and run. What they were going to do is take care of the advertising, put together the specs. We did talk about what we were looking for, and they did that. And the next thing we received from them was a list of names. And as I recall, they were broken into 2 categories. There were about 10 or 15 people who had central office experience, who had been dealing with the superintendent. Then there was another group, all having certification as a superintendent, but never having actually worked. So looking at those 2 groups, we decided that we'd really focus on the people who had central office experience. In the group, I think we had 12 members on that search committee.
Yeah.
I believe 2 of the ladies actually had worked on a committee at the state level with Dr. Naiman. And the reviews we were getting from those particular people were raving that this man walked on water. He came before the committee, and I must say he presented himself very well. He had the right answers. And when it came to the end, we seemed to have 2 candidates. There was a lady and Dr. Naiman. The night of the vote, it was unanimous that Dr. Naiman had the vote. And so we met later, and I think Bob was with us. There was a small group, I think it was 3 or 4 members of the committee, who met with Dr. Naiman aside, talked about what he was looking for in his contract, what we could give, and we came to an agreement, came back from that, and after that point, everything was quite settled. But the elections came up, and I was out of a job, so I never got back into this. And then the next thing I found out was that, number one, he had talked about looking for a job in Rhode Island, and the committee had agreed to give him 2 more years. I will be honest with you, with him or anybody else, I would never have done that. I just wouldn't have. I would have told him to resign on the spot, and we'll do it again, and he'll pay us for the cost of that screening, because this guy knew what he was getting into, and he signed a 3-year contract. I just couldn't believe that. But that was another issue, but that's where that went. And then the next thing I find out by reading in the paper, about 9 months later, a year later, somebody finally woke up and found that the budget was in a $1.7 million deficit. You know, you might expect that in New York City, because $1 million in New York in the school department floats pretty fast. But here in Spencer, I just couldn't fathom that people, the people at the Blue House, the people in everyone involved, this thing slid by him. That's a lot of money on that budget. But it was there, I guess, and you've ended up having to borrow money to pay that back, and oh my goodness, all kinds of issues. But Dr. Naiman and Bob, I know, was there, and you know, listen, everybody liked him. Bob, you were there,
Yeah.
You know that. We all did. He talked a good game, and everybody said, now there's some questions about going out on a site search. That wasn't done, and the reason why I did bring it up, and people said, hey, look, the guy's looking at another job. We don't want to stall and lose him. Let's hurry up and get this going. And that's what we did. So that's how that system worked. Now, again, I can tell you that I think the big mistake was having the MMMC do it, MAN, whatever they are.
MASC.
That was a $10,000 bill, if I'm not mistaken.
I never saw the bill. It never came in while I was there. I asked for it several times. I never saw it. It was $10,000.
$10,000.
It's the first time I hear the price.
Yeah.
I mean, and then when I hear that they take the former superintendent and immediately place him into another job, and I'm thinking, you know, they never asked us questions and we never said anything, but I'm getting the feeling like they're bouncing balls around and they just want to get people in, and I suppose those candidates paid a certain fee for the service and whatnot. I don't know about that either, but I would certainly never even consider suggesting that they do a search. This is totally unprofessional.
Do you know offhand if there was ever a telephone call made to the Blue Building at any point in time, anonymous? And I know people don't like dealing in anonymous, but was there a telephone call made to the Blue Building before he signed a contract not to hire that guy?
I'm not aware of it. I'm not. Who did they call?
I'm not going to say. You know.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Even if somebody had done that, you're not going to put a lot of stock into something like this unless the caller tells you who they are.
The quote was, "Do your homework on him. Don't hire him because he's already ruined one school district, and we know you're actively looking at to hire him. So my question is, were you ever aware of that telephone call?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
And
So if you had to do something different, let's say you get on the school committee, you've already been this route once. Let's say you get on the school committee, you know we need a new superintendent. What would you do different?
I don't know if I'd go with a professional search or whether do it yourself. It takes time, but you can. Well, I'd be glad to put in time, and I'm sure other people would, to advertise it in the right journals. The Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents has a monthly journal. Put ads in there. Put ads in the paper, probably in the Globe and in the Worcester paper as well, to see where you're going to get anything. Be nice if you can get an ad in a nationwide magazine of some sort, teacher magazine or something, because you want to open this thing up. I would tend to go that way, and I'll tell you, I would certainly never use the school committee association. Like I say, I knew 4 people, worked with them before, and their results were always good. But I'm not sure I would go with anybody.
Hold that thought, Peter. I got a phone call coming in. Good evening, caller. Thanks for calling the other side. What's your question?
My question is for Mr. Rock. I want to know if, while he was on the school committee, if any member of that school committee had sat down, maybe did a Google check on Mr. Naaman and saw that Westbrook, Maine was having a $3.5 million deficit or shortfall at the time they were hiring him. And to me, I guess that would be a concern.
I was not aware of any contact.
I Googled. I was on that committee with along with Matt McCarthy. Oh, can you repeat the question, caller?
Did anybody do a search? Did anybody do a Google search?
Oh, okay.
Just a Google search.
Yeah, I did a Google search. I checked out. I Google searched Tim as well as other superintendents that were also applying, because we ended up with MASC came forward with Dr. Naaman's name, and Dr. Naaman was at the top of the tier. We were told that right from the get jump, that this is one of the top tier candidates out there. So went out, did the Google search, and a lot of other people. I think I talked to Leo Fayard. Leo was on our committee. Dave Bayshant was on our committee. And ironically, Dr. Naaman had interviewed in 2006 when Dr. Hicks got hired. And it was only by a second vote that we didn't end up with Dr. Naaman the first time, which kind of surprised me. I didn't, we knew nothing about that, up until halfway through the.
Who's the chairman of that committee? Was there a chairman?
Peter was the chairman. Matt McCarthy was on it. I was on it. We had a lot of folks in there. It was well represented. There was only one parent, Peter, 1 or 2 parents on that committee.
Yeah, well, there was those 2 ladies were citizens. They were not. You remember the 2 that worked with Naaman? We had that. We had a couple of. We had the principal. We had teachers. We had a couple of teachers. We covered the whole gamut, and like I say, and you relied on, and I relied on the Massachusetts School Committee Association to have done their job as well, and they were getting, like Bob said, they were giving this guy high report cards.
As well as we had people who had personal knowledge of working with Dr. Naaman, and everybody to a person was high, and I was. And I've said on my Mea Culpa tour, when I went out and apologized on several different occasions for hiring Dr. Naaman, it's like, I voted for Obama the first time, so who am I to sit there and throw stones? It's like, if I knew then what we know now, absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, Google and Naaman, nothing showed up that was glaring. There was a couple of issues. We had heard about some rumors about issues with him as well as other superintendents who had problems with people, with people on their staff. But that's going to happen with any superintendent. And as far as doing a site search, that's one place where you and I disagreed. And I said doing a site search is like going and calling for a reference on anybody in this day and age. You can't call and someone can't be honest with you and say, well, he did X, Y, Z, or he did this, or he did that, because you could be sued for it. And we had to be very, you have to be very careful with something like that. So going all the way to Maine to go talk to people in person and hope that they're going to give you information, and how do you know if it's biased or not? It's like, would you go to another site to interview a plumber, or would you go somewhere else to interview somebody who's going to build your house? No. You know, you don't do this as a normal course, and in the corporate world, you don't do that either. You don't go, oh, we're going to go to his business and find out what his employees think. And that's the one thing that I disagreed with from the beginning. You know, and I don't think that, I don't know, not that I haven't taken a beating over this in the past. It's like I certainly have, but it's like I don't think that a site search would have solved
You
anything.
didn't get the beating.
You guys got the beating.
Okay, because everybody thinks that sitting school committee hired him, and we didn't. We were stuck with him.
Yeah.
Okay, and to get back to the $1.7 million deficit, I worked on that budget. There was myself, Matt McCarthy, and Mr. Cote. We worked on that budget. Okay, we had some questions about it. Matt more than anybody else, and I've apologized to Matt because I should have followed up more with that. That being said, we actually passed that budget down to the finance committee of this town to ask for some help, and we didn't get any help on that. Or if we did, it was very, very little, or never got an answer back. That being said, we sat in budget meetings week after week after week, and what was on that paper and what he did behind our backs in that blue building is two different things. We gave him the ability, he showed us the numbers to hire X amount of teachers, okay? He hired 17. And behind our backs, went to the town of Leicester and hired their art teacher, I think, at like a step 9L or 11L, okay? Behind our backs. Incomplete contracts. Just these things that just we had no idea about until we started seeing some things in the warrants and stuff, and some of the negative balances, and then we heard some other stuff come out, and then somebody really spilled the beans. So I mean, we caught it in December, but by then it had already, kind of transpired. That being said, forget about what he's done. What I want to know, would you be willing to have a forensic audit done on this district?
Would I? Why not?
That's a yes or no question.
No, I'm saying sure.
Okay. Then why can't we get the rest of the town to follow suit with that? How come we can't get other people to say, absolutely, let's do that?
Wait a minute. Now you're getting into. You're on a school committee. You have some jurisdictions here. You want to go over and tell the boys at the town hall what to do? It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, that hasn't worked out yet.
The school committee is the only one that can ask for it.
Of who?
A forensic audit being done. The guys
I know,
down at the.
But you can't ask the town to do it.
Well, you can. Well, wait a second.
you could
can.
ask.
Why not just put a non-binding referendum question on the May ballot? Let the people decide. It's their freaking money.
Well, first of all, I have to say that
Their money.
there is an audit done annually on the books in Spencer, and I know the firm that they're using. I've used them in other places where I've worked. I find their work very good. Now, I do remember the audit team that was here when I first came, and I certainly questioned some of the things because there were mistakes that were glaring, and they never even mentioned them. But the fact is, I think we've had this audit. What are we going to gain by having how often do you want to do this forensic audit?
I think you need to do it now. I think you need to do it now. You need to get a starting point because we've never had one. It's a fluid budget. I sat in front of in the audience when you were the chairman and one of the former superintendents presented 5 different budgets with 5 weeks in a row with 5 different scenarios. One time we were going to lose 17 teachers. One time we're going to have to get rid of band. I don't know. One time we're going to have to. It was 5 different things. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a bunch of junk sitting on paper. And until somebody comes in and can tell me, here's ground zero, this is where we start from, and this is how much it's going to cost to run it, I think it's nothing but a fallacy that a public school system can even operate on the numbers that are being presented.
Gentlemen, we got less than a minute left, so we got to try to wrap this up.
Sorry.
Peter, I want to thank you for coming in tonight. We got the Welcome to the 2014 Cure Search Walk on September 27th, 2014 in Boston. If you want to go, can you put that graphic up for me, please, Adam? Aaron. It's up there right now. As you can see up there, you can go online. You can go online at www.curesearchwalk.org to register. got about 30 seconds left.
30 seconds.
Oh, we got about less than that. We got about 10 seconds.
Great.
We got about 30 seconds? All right, we got about 30 seconds
Okay.
left.
There's a group trying to form a PTO, a group of parents and teachers trying to form a PTO group right here in town. They need your support. The next meeting is April 9th, 6 o'clock at the Spencer Country Inn. It's time to get our district back. Enough is enough.
All right, folks, thanks a lot for joining us. We thank our special guests tonight, and we'll see you guys next time on the other side.